What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Omar, and today I have a special guest with me. It's my boy Andrew. Andrew, say what's up.
Hey, what's up, YouTube?
It is Andrew on the cellular device, and today I'm gonna start a little series I'm feeling like doing. I'm doing it on my radio show as well. No Jum No Sports on WCDB Radio. Check that out every Friday, noon to 2 p.m. But we're gonna start with our MLB previews, and we're gonna start in the American League East, which honestly, of all the divisions across the league, this one might be one of the more entertaining divisions this season. A lot of divisions don't really have two or three teams that can compete. This one has two juggernauts at the top. But we're going to start at the bottom because, we start with the worst and we head up to the best. And the number 5, I have the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, this was a team that I had a little bit of faith in going into spring training. Obviously, they're a very young team. They always are. They don't spend big. But even after trading Evan Longoria, they kept Alex Colomé, they kept Chris Archer, and they had some young talent in Brent Honeywell, guys like that coming up. Brent Honeywell is now out for the season. They've had some other injuries as well in camp. I just don't see it from this Tampa Bay Rays team. Andrew, I ask you, going forward, do the Rays have any chance ever of really getting back to the World Series and really capturing that glimpse of dominance that they had that one year with David Price?
Not for a very long time. Brett Honeywell, obviously a big piece. He went down early. They do have some young pieces like Jose De Leon, but I think Archer might be traded soon if the trend keeps going. So it's not looking too good for the Rays.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that both Alex Colomé and Chris Archer are still rumored to be on the block despite their trades not going through in the offseason. But like Andrew said, this is a team that is not expecting much this season. They're almost in a constant rebuild just because of the way that they use their payroll. But hopefully the Rays can be at least a little bit exciting and maybe, win some big games down the stretch to really knock some other teams out of the playoffs. Now we move to number 4, and at number 4 I have the Baltimore Orioles, and every season I go in thinking I just don't like the Orioles that much this season. They have a lot on offense. You got Jonathan Scope, who broke out last year and is really a dominant second baseman last year offensively. And of course, you have Manny Machado in a contract year, one of the best players in baseball. Had a little bit of a down year last year, but I expect him to ramp it up and get ready for a big payday in the offseason. But with the Orioles, it always comes back to one thing, and that's the pitching. Andrew, is there any hope for a team like the Orioles, which is going to provide so much offense, but no pitching whatsoever?
No, it's the same thing every year for Baltimore Orioles. Their best pitcher is Dylan Bundy right now. That's just not going to cut it.
That is not a good sign. When
Yes,
your best pitcher is Dylan, I believe Andrew and I are both in a fantasy baseball league, and I believe Dylan Bundy went around starting pitcher 40. So when your best pitcher is somewhat the 40th most valuable pitcher in the league, that's not a good sign. They do have Zach Britton coming back sometime in June or July, and there's been rumors that he might be a starter. Who knows what's going on there? Basically, it's the Baltimore Orioles just trying to figure out how in the world can we get a team ERA that's somewhat decent? Because the
Orioles are just a mess with their pitching, and they don't even have enough offensively, even though they have a couple big bats in there. There's just not enough balance.
Yeah, and I think the story with the Orioles is similar to the New Orleans Saints of the NFL, in which everybody always says, well, the Saints would be such a great team if they could just play defense. And we saw that this year. They combined that offense with finally a good defense because it seemed like every year they couldn't find the defense. I think the Orioles would be a solid team if they could just find pitching, and they still haven't been able to do that. We move to number 3, where the Toronto Blue Jays slot in, and honestly, I don't really think the Toronto Blue Jays are very worthy of a 3rd spot in a division, but in this division, it's very top-heavy, and I think the Blue Jays have enough to finish 3rd. You look at acquisitions, and basically from injury here. We got Josh Donaldson, who didn't play a full season last year, but is still a very high-caliber player. Hopefully, he can stay healthy for the entire year. You get Aaron Sanchez, who dealt with blisters all of last season, but just 2 years ago was a Cy Young candidate. Like I said, addition through return from injury, really, for this team. They don't go out and make a big sign, a big splash, except for Curtis Granderson, of course. Yes, Curtis Granderson, met great. I miss you, Curtis. But Yes, the Blue Jays aren't the greatest team, but I think, with guys like Stroman, Sanchez, and then on offense, Josh Donaldson leading the way. Of course, they still have very good defense led by Kevin Pillar. I think this team's good enough to finish third in this division. What do you think, Andrew?
I completely agree. There's no real huge upside for this team, but there's also no huge downside. They're just a team's bound to finish 500, maybe sneak over. They have a decent offense and decent pitching. Nothing much more else I can say about that.
Yeah, I think that if there's any team in this division, and maybe even in the entire American League, who is just such an 81-81 team on paper, it's the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, like you said, there's nothing that really screams out good or bad on this team. It just seems like a middle of the road team. So I think 81-81 is a good projection for them. And then we get to the two big boys, and I know I'm going to take some flack for this. I took it on Twitter about a month ago when I announced I was going to do this. I'm going with the Yankees second and the Red Sox first. I know a bunch of Yankee fans, they are not happy with the way that I picked that, but here's my reasoning, basically, and I'm just going to go back and forth between the two teams. When you look at the Boston Red Sox, first of all, it's very important to note that the Boston Red Sox won the division last year. The way people talk, you would seem to think that the Yankees won by 20 games last year. The Red Sox won this division. It was a narrow division, very close, but the Red Sox did it last year. They did it with Mookie Betts not being the same Mookie Betts we saw in 2016. They did it without that big bopper in the middle of the lineup that they used to have in David Ortiz. They didn't get the production that they wanted out of guys like Jackie Bradley Jr. They didn't get very much at all from the catcher position. Chris Sale was a great addition for them, but other than that, in the rotation, Rick Porcello was terrible. David Price became a reliever. This is a team that really struggled in the grand scheme of things last year and still won the division because they're that talented. Then you look on the other side with the Yankees, Aaron Judge pops out of nowhere and hits for an incredible average and incredible amounts of home runs. That the power is legit. I don't think there's any doubting that. But the average might expect to come down this season. He did hit in the 220s in the second half last year. Luis Severino, a guy who throws very hard, who threw a heck of a lot of innings last year. And if I know anything as a Met fan, and Andrew, you can vouch for me on this one, anytime there's a guy who throws a lot of innings and throws super hard, it makes you nervous about what's going to happen to that arm in the future. They even got production from guys like CC Sabathia last year, who are just a year older. Brett Gardner, another guy who's a year older. I just seem to think that, yes, Stanton is a huge addition for the Yankees, but people should not sell short the addition of JD Martinez as well for the Boston Red Sox, a guy who hit 45 home runs in 3/4 of a season. Unbelievable year. And personally, I just think the Red Sox are better built for the regular season than the New York Yankees. What do you think, Andrew?
I don't know. This one's a tough one. This is going to be a last weekend kind of thing, I think. Definitely. It's going to be really tight the whole year. They're very even. If you look at the teams, look at both rotations. Red Sox, they obviously have Sale. We'll see how Price bounces back. But after that, you have a few question marks in the rotation. Same thing with the Yankees. They have Severino if he stays healthy at the top. And after that, who knows? CC, you don't know what you're getting from him. Tanaka's been inconsistent. And, of course, the lineups are just two juggernaut lineups. Huge acquisitions from both JD and Giancarlo. It's actually a very even matchup. So
it is going to be an interesting, like you said, last weekend kind of division. In fact, I think the race between these two teams might be the best out of any race. But I think a big key to look for on what wins this division is two guys, one on either side. For the Red Sox, the two guys I'm looking at are Andrew Benintendi and Rafael Devers. Where do those guys go after year one? And on the other side, for the Yankees, I'm looking at Greg Bird and I'm looking at Gleyber Torres. I think those are the young players who are not going to hit third in on these lineups, but Greg Bird, a guy with immense power who can hit 30 home runs, maybe even 35, 40 home runs if he has a great year, a breakout year in Yankee Stadium. Will Andrew Benintendi finally show off that elite, talent and hit for over 300 average? Will Rafael Devers be the breakout player? Or maybe Gleyber Torres comes up to the major leagues and sets the world on fire? I think there's a lot of big names in this matchup. It's going to be fun to watch all year. But one thing we're going to want to keep our eye on is how are these young players progressing for both teams and what kind of impact they're making. So there you have it. we start with the AL East. I'm going with the Boston Red Sox to win the AL East, and of course, I'm going to say the Yankees are going to get a wild card spot in the American League as well. Should be fun to watch the American League East all year long. Stick around for more videos. We got the AL Central coming up next. It's been Omar and my boy Andrew. Peace.